Good evening. I'd like to call the Board of Selectmen meeting for the town of Hingham to order on November 20th, 2018. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes of October 30th, 2018, and November 13th, 2018.
So moved. Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Public comment on items not on the agenda. Seeing none. We'll get right to the first item on the agenda, and that's the Historic Preservation Award Initiative. Andrea, would you please join us at the table?
Thank you. I'm just going to schlep this chair up here so because we don't have the keys. Just want to remind people this is what the award is going to look like. So,
Okay.
need a visual. Okay.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming in. I know this is a follow-up to our earlier discussion, and perhaps you could just take us through briefly what you've done since then. I know we've had the pack and I've had a chance to review it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Andrea Young, and I'm staff for the Preservation Award team, and many of whom are here tonight. And we've been working to finalize the details on the Preservation Award, which will be given out in various categories. And we're very excited. The whole purpose of the award is to promote historic preservation in many ways. It could be through building, could be through compatible infill, it could be through conserving interiors on homes or exteriors, putting on an addition that is compatible, or a variety of other things. It could be this award could be given to an individual who has made a significant contribution to historic preservation through action or other means. So anyway, that's what this is about. And for those of you who didn't hear our original presentation, this was spearheaded by Chairman Healy, who had gone to Savannah and Charleston and was impressed by the preservation awards that were on many of the homes there, and just the active pursuit of historic preservation. So, since we last met, we have developed a schedule, so that beginning at the end of this month and early December, we will issue a press release regarding the award, and we will post that in various places, including social media. We have nominations. We will also be sending out invitations to nominate as well. So we're going to try and make sure everyone knows about this. Architects, contractors, and other building professionals. February 4th, the nominations are due in the Historical Commission office, which gives applicants or nominees, or people who are filling out the nominations, self-nominations are encouraged, a little over a month to be able to get that information together. And then the selection committee will then review, and winners will be announced, determined and announced in February, mid-February, and invitations will be sent out for an award ceremony, which will happen in April, and Chairman Healy will be giving out the award unless you're going to be out of town.
I'll make it my business to be around.
Thank you. Or we can change it if we need to. The other thing we've done is to finalize our nomination form, and we've also published guidelines and a checklist so that you can to apply and what categories. And also the evaluation criteria, eligibility and evaluation criteria. So that's where we're at. I'd just like to say that we are, in terms of the funding, Mr. Mayor, would you like to?
So you'll see when we get around to doing Andrea's budget hearing here in a couple of weeks. I've added a budget request of $600 per year to that department to fund this program. We anticipate annual costs in the 300-ish range. I worry about unforeseen expenses where this is the first time we're presenting it. So that's why I recommended $600 at least this year.
Thank you.
Okay.
The other aspects of this, the venue for the award ceremony, it may be here, it may be in any of many historic buildings around town. And we're going to seek donations for some of the other aspects like refreshments. And so I think that pretty much covers it. If you have questions.
My colleagues, questions, comments?
I do have a couple.
Sure.
Okay. Well, first of all, Paul and Andrea, I appreciate, and the committee appreciate all the efforts on this. And, I was thinking the other day, as the town has grown and changed, it strikes me that periodically we need to pass that torch on, both symbolically and substantively, to the next generation of the stewards of Hingham. And, I think to your point, Paul, to kind of create a recognition of the folks in town who are taking their time and resources to hold on to and preserve our historic legacy, I applaud. I am glad you brought up the funding because, I think we're on the advent of our budget process where we scrutinize literally every single dollar that you all are generous enough to give us in your taxes. We try to spend as wisely as we possibly can. So I appreciate that. I'm assuming then with just a $600 uptick in Andrea's budget that you feel you can handle this within your current staffing levels.
Yes.
Okay. And the award committee, how would that be selected? Would it be, are you thinking that the inaugural committee would be the award design group, and who would appoint those folks? And
So what I would recommend we do is, if you all adopt the program tonight, that sets a number of seats for that committee. I would suggest, like we usually do, we reach out to the community and ask for talent bank applications
Okay.
for anyone interested in those seats. Now, these are a pretty specific set of skill sets that we're looking for. I would hope that everybody on this committee would submit a talent bank if they're interested in serving, and then you could appoint them at a future meeting, whether it's, mid-December or whenever.
so my understanding then would be this would be a committee like many of our other committees where the Board of Selectmen would be the appointing authority for.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we'd appreciate that, yes.
Okay, I think that's all.
And just a follow-up question, how many members would we see, Tom? 5?
There should really be 7.
Was it 7?
So I just, my own suggestion for this, going through Talent Bank, and we have, so many people who volunteer, I'd maybe start at 5. If we have an abundance of talent, perhaps we come back and change the size. I also think about meetings having a quorum. It's easier to get a quorum with 3. I don't know, maybe just ask you to think about that, Tom. We, just, in terms of that. Andrea, could you remind me, please, and I think you mentioned it at the last meeting, but I'm sorry, I don't remember. How many awards do you envision giving out in a year?
There are 7 categories, and whether or not there will be applicants applying in each of the categories, I don't know. It's possible we may be giving out 1 award.
Up to 7?
Up to 7, yes.
it would be
There are
up-
7 categories, yes, thank you.
Yeah. Tom, the other suggestion I would just make on the formation of a committee, regardless of the size, typically in Hingham, when we establish a standing committee, when, let's say we're appointing 7 people, we stagger the appointments so that there's some
Yeah.
continuity. So, I'd suggest, a couple for a 1-year,
Yeah.
a 2-year, a 3-year, and that way the institutional knowledge, which is so important, particularly in the first couple years,
Sure.
is retained. It also then, I think, gives an opportunity for other interested people who might become aware of the program as they start seeing things, and perhaps may have an interest down the road. Thank you. I appreciate that this is really well thought out. I appreciate that the details have been worked through. I hope that that serves us well when we go to implement it. And, there are a lot of people in the room. I would just say to everybody in the room, it's the day before Thanksgiving starts, and we have like a full house. I think that's a credit to the citizenry of Hingham, that people are really engaged. And while we may come here for different agenda items tonight, I think I would just give a shout out at this point to those who have been involved in historic preservation in the community. For many of us, it's what attracted us to this community. For many of us, it's what makes, one element of what makes Hingham such a special place. So I appreciate the continued stewardship of the many historic treasures in this town.
Thank you very much.
So is the idea, Tom, that you and Andrea would come up with some, like, I hesitate to call them bylaws, but you come up with some sort of standard operating procedures for the committee or something that would articulate the concerns that we've relayed tonight?
The mission and whatnot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll
and
work
the
on
membership and that kind of thing? Okay.
The membership is outlined in here as 7, that's what I was just looking through. The membership was contemplated by this group, and they're recommending 7. If we're adopting a policy tonight, I would, or the creation of the award, I would recommend that we do that so that we can advertise it over the course of the next couple of weeks. However, whatever you all want it to be, their recommendation, what we're hearing is a recommendation of a 7-member.
I can do 7.
I defer, but I have to say, it can become increasingly difficult to continue to fill committees
Sure.
at that
I understand
at that
your
level.
concern, yeah.
And, anyway, I'm happy to follow your recommendation, and we can
you think?
see how it goes.
That's fine.
You
We
want
can,
to amend it to 5?
that's fine. I understand your concern.
I would suggest, a year from now, let's revisit how everything went.
Okay.
I'm certain that you're going to make adjustments, and I would say, if at that point, you may want to adjust the size of the committee in some way, let's see how it goes.
Okay.
So we get all these
Historic-
people involved right now. Let's leave it at 7, and let's think about it in a year.
I don't have a strong feeling either way.
What I can do is when I stagger the terms, I can set it as, instead of 2 1-year terms, 2 2-year terms, and 3 3-year terms, I can do it the other way. So we'll have 3 1-year terms, and then 2 2. Does that make sense? So that we'll have 3 people potentially rolling off after 1 year, as opposed to just 2.
I'd just like to thank the people that participated in this, and I'll read their names.
Thank you, Paul.
Joan Brancali.
She's
Thank
right
you
there,
very
and
much.
she designed the award.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Suzanne Buchanan.
She's back there.
Ben Burnham.
He's in the second row over there.
Elizabeth Dings.
First row right here.
Mary Morrison.
She was unable to attend tonight. She's
Joyce Schreier.
Joyce is, there she is.
All right, outstanding. Sevi Strevelowski. Last but not least, Ben Wilcox.
Was also not able to attend this
Okay.
evening. Thank you.
Well, thank you
for that.
one and all for all this work. Really appreciate it.
Would you take a motion?
I would love to. Thank you.
I'd like,
Oh, Mrs. Schreier has a comment?
Do I need to watch the microphone? Just a tiny thing. During the meetings, We all learn, excuse me.
I'm sorry, Joyce.
That's
Here,
okay.
You sit here.
That's okay, I'm not going to speak long. During the meetings that went on all of the spring, summer, in planning the, everything that you've heard about, one of the discussions was who would be good to serve on the judge, to be the judges. And it was suggested by a few people that perhaps a couple at least should continue from the fact that they were on this planning committee.
I agree, yeah.
And therefore, when you do your search, to have part of that be that a couple of those are already in the works, and then you're asking others from when they filled in their forms of what they'd like to do.
I think that's wise, wise counsel.
Thank you.
Let's do the motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the Historic Preservation Awards program as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Can I just do something here?
Sure.
Just take this opportunity. I just want to say that the Historical Commission has published a wonderful book by Martha Reardon Buick. It is about Tranquility Grove and chronicles the abolitionist picnic of 1844, which took place right across the street somewhere in the woods there. So it's fascinating. There's a book signing at 3 p.m. on Sunday, December the 9th. We're partnering with the Historical Society to do that. Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
very much,
Andrea.
Andrea.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Well done.
Okay. Next. Weymouth Compressor Station discussion, potential vote. All right, so we left off last week. We listened to people express their views. We took a report from the compressor station task force. We spoke to the residents who have gathered as an advocacy group. And at this point, we deferred any further discussion until we heard the results of the meeting. What is it, November 15th?
It was, yep.
And we got a memo from the chief, which I had a chance to review. Can you update us
Sure.
on how that all shook out, Tom?
So 2 meetings were held that will inform your discussion tonight. One was the LEPC Public Safety Meeting, which was held on October 2nd, 2018, and attended by the Undersecretary of Homeland Security for the state. And that was a meeting of all LEPC members, which is mainly fire and police chiefs, et cetera. That meeting was attended by our fire chief and head of our LEPC, Steve Murphy, and he submitted this letter you have in your packets. He outlines in that letter some concerns about manning and equipment concerns and the safety of his personnel in the event of a response, that kind of thing. The next meeting that was held, and again, these meetings are held to inform both the health impact assessment document that is being created now, as well as the DEP air quality report. So on November 15th, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, MAPC, hosted a meeting at Quincy High School for concerned residents relating to the health impact assessment. They covered 3 main agenda topics. One was air quality, the second was land use, and the third was noise. In my opinion, the air quality of those 3, air quality is the only consideration that it would affect Hingham. And, it was a lively discussion. There was a large contingent of folks that had serious concerns about air quality results, or the air quality results that would result as a if the compressor station were built and in operation at the Fall River Basin. So, as far as I'm concerned, I think the air quality was the concern for Hingham. There is a potential concern. I mean, just logic would dictate that if there was a large release there, we would likely be impacted, our residents would likely be impacted. The question that MAPC's trying to determine is the effects of that impact and the likelihood of an event. I think those are some of the things that are being considered. Unknowns at this point. The reports aren't issued, the HIA isn't complete, and DEP hasn't considered that. So,
Say that again, likelihood of the event, of an event.
likelihood of an event, and then
And what was
the
the first thing?
degree to which we would be impacted, or anybody would be impacted along the way. They're talking about planting, or they actually had planted canisters to review air quality concerns, trying to get some basic information. I think benzene was one of the chemicals of concern, and they were collecting that baseline data over the last several months, I would imagine, a couple of years. They are restricted to use, they are restricted in their data analysis because it didn't sound like anyway there was a lot of data available and beyond the city of Boston and some of its review data. So, not every town is regularly doing air quality assessments. So that data just didn't exist. So they had to do some new collection.
Is Boston a party to this action?
Not to my knowledge. I don't know.
Is Braintree a party to this action?
I've been unable to figure that one out. I don't know.
Okay.
I have calls into a couple of parties, but was unable to figure it out. Quincy and Weymouth both are.
All right, so, I mean, it sounds like it's kind of what we've already known.
Yep.
And at this point, I know a lot of you in the room have sent in emails. I can't identify faces with the emails, but I've tried to acknowledge the receipt of all of the ones that have been sent to me. So, at this point, the three of us are going to have to make a decision as to whether we want to take this next legal step or take a legal step. And I know you all came here, and if there's something you want to add that hasn't already been said, you're welcome to do so. I just would ask that we don't replow the same ground over and over. Otherwise, you can just sit there and listen to us talk and either get angry or be happy. Yes.
Joshua Ross, 125 Wampatuck Road. Just on behalf of the Compressor Station Task Force, regardless of your decision tonight, I would just ask that you give us further guidance going forward on what the next steps would be.
Sure.
Whether it be if you decide to go ahead and get involved, what would be our next steps? And then likewise, if you choose not to get involved, what is the realistic possibility that we get involved down the road and what you want to have happen to the task force?
Sure.
Thank you,
Other
Mr.
than
Ross.
that, good luck.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Taller first. Jennifer Mathian, 159 Stainer Drive. I know you heard from me last week. Just wanted to add briefly on Tom's remarks regarding the HIA meeting. One of the concerns that continues to be brought up is that a lot of the numbers and the data is provided by Enbridge itself. So that doesn't sit very well for while the HIA is supposed to be independent. They certainly recognize that there are limitations. They have time limitations to conducting and completing this HIA, and they have funding restrictions. So they recognize that one of the issues with their own report, and we certainly do, as critics of that report as it forms, is a lot of the data that goes into it is provided by the company that wants it to go there. So I think as we're talking about, this idea of intervention, and this is, now I'm going to start repeating myself from last week, we really at this point want to preserve our legal voice if we need to use it. And there are a lot of unknowns, but a lot of the unknowns are very questionable, and it might fall unfavorably to Hingham if we don't save this step.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, in the back. Lady from Winter Street, I believe.
Yes, the lady from 70 Winter Street, Elizabeth Molds. I just wanted to follow up. I think you had a question about whether Boston was involved. They are not. The reason their name has popped up a lot is because the air quality monitors monitoring our air are located in Blue Hills, very far away from Hingham and from the site, which is why the question as to what is actually in the air has come up and why these independent air tests have been conducted. I believe that the HIA has found that we are already over the legal limit for formaldehyde on a couple of days. And I know all the data isn't in, but I think that that was one thing to consider. And just wanted to add that to your consideration. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I have notes. I'm not as well spoken of the ladies who preceded me and the gentlemen. My name is Michelle Breton. Good evening, and thank you so much for putting this on the agenda tonight. It's an issue near and dear to many of our hearts. Around the time I was asked to help with this important issue, one of my best friends was in the fight of her life with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. There wasn't a thing we could do to stop the cancer from ultimately taking her life at the young age of 38. I never felt so helpless. I'm not saying her cancer was due to the gas industry or any of the related businesses. What I am saying is that during that dark time, I made her a silent promise. I promised her that I would do everything I could to protect her and from more people being exposed to cancer-causing agents, that I would protect her kids and that I would protect my kids. The proposed compressor station is a tremendous health risk. Enbridge states in their very own reporting that there are 10 known carcinogens in the gas that will leak out constantly, just 2 miles from the Hingham border. 10 ways our community could be exposed to cancer. Tonight is just one way I'll fulfill my promise to my friend. I pride myself on being illogical. I pride myself on being reasonable. This isn't illogical. This isn't a reasonable project. The known health impact, carcinogens drifting through our air, or any air for that matter, aren't worth any of the risk, especially since there isn't any reward to this project. It's all going to Canada. Very little is helping New England. If anything, it's not even helping Massachusetts. Really, I encourage you to look at that data. I have to ask, and forgive me for the dramatic tone I'm about to take, but this has been 2 years in the making, and this is the only time I'll speak, probably remaining with the time that we have left. Do you want to be the governing body that had the chance at stopping the project, but didn't act the only way you could in the air quality permit? Regardless of political history or signals from surrounding towns, we need you to do the right thing and protect the citizens of this town. Again, I thank you for your time. It's a high priority for not all, but many citizens in this town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Doctor, good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking time again. Dr. Lana, 109 Fitzroy Drive. I think what I want to share is that I have been a researcher for 8 years before I went into clinical medicine. And if you're not in the research world, it's hard to understand when data isn't put forward. So I'm going to tell you a 1-minute story. My first year of research was in the food industry. I worked in my summer, and we played with mice being exposed to saccharin. And they all died at General Foods. This is years ago. And we were so excited because we thought they were going to take saccharin off the market. And they looked at us and said, "That's nice. It'll take 7 years before we remove that product. Thank you, ladies." Unfortunately, in the world of making money, the research can lag behind the clinical realities. There's lots of economic reasons behind that. The gas industry is very powerful and very rich. That data in the scientific world, we are not questioning the toxic nature of every single one of those elements, not in the least. So when you have a lack of data, don't mistake that like you have to sit back and look at, do you want proactive prevention or reactive intervention? And that is the difference here. No one pays money to do studies until there's a reason. So the gas industry knows that. So until something starts to happen, it's not the big event that is my biggest fear, it's every single blowdown. Every single one of them. And truly, if I could personally hire the chauffeur to drive you near a blowdown, if you allowed me to, I would personally pay for it. Because you just have to sit there once and you will literally go, oh my God, we almost put that in our town. So I understand that you don't really see or feel, or you're trying to do the right thing, and if the data's not there, oh my God, you're spending the taxpayers' money. And that's so wonderful that you care about our dollars, as I said last time. But scientific research really is deftly deceptive, especially when it's not being presented by an independent group. So the fact that this is Enbridge's data and people are on catch-up, people who aren't being paid for their research. So who, like the physician groups working on this, there's no funding. So in between seeing, 20 and 30 and 40 patients a day and going to our meetings and staying up on our CME, people are volunteering their time to try to collect this data. So that's the problem. If there's no money to protect it, we're on catch-up because Enbridge is already ahead and the pipeline push is coming from DC, right? Like, that's where we are right now. But I promise you, our carbon footprint will be the end of the world as we know it, and this is one little step to say, not in a small town where they've never been before, where one little accident is going to blow up a bridge and every single blowdown will hit this town. Please, just take the time. I promise you, I will personally donate the money for the chauffeur for you guys to go sit near a blowdown. Once you experience it, you won't have a question of what anyone's talking about. So that's all I have to say.
Anybody else? Okay. I think we've covered the audience input at this point. I'm not quite sure what you're referring to as a blowdown. I've seen a house blow up due to a gas leak. That was pretty vivid, but no, I've seen it here in Hingham. So
No,
live.
no, let's move on. Okay, thanks.
All right. Probably shouldn't have said that. My colleagues like to start, or you want me to, or happy to.
So, like Mary said, I was incredibly impressed with the articulate nature of each and every email that came into our inbox. Some of them conveying, similar messages, some of them unique viewpoints, but all of them thoughtful, respectful. Again, to your point, Mary, just I think as policymakers in the town, it's critical that we hear from the public, and the fact that at this busy time of year, so many of you, and very many of you, I think took the time to be so comprehensive in your correspondence with us has definitely enhanced my my understanding of the issue. The three of us have spent, as you know, a long period of time over the last almost year, say 9 months, trying to get up to speed on the concerns surrounding this project. One thing I will say on that, and Dr. Lana brought this up. One of our jobs, and one of our really difficult jobs, is understanding particularized viewpoints and then balancing those particularized viewpoints with the responsibility of being the fiduciary to the entire town. So, again, I think it's critical to hear from folks when an issue like this comes up, because if we don't hear from you, sometimes you think, well, nobody's really concerned, so we can just move on, and that certainly isn't the case with this. On the other hand, though, we have to take those viewpoints and assess them as part of the larger picture of governance in Hingham. I think you heard me last time around express, I think, my desire to see us, as has been characterized tonight, get in line and hold our place, and be a part of the process so that we can continue to evaluate and protect the interests of this community. And so, I'd be interested in hearing from my colleagues, but my viewpoint from last week hasn't changed, and if anything, has become solidified, given further reflection.
So, sure, I'll jump in. Like Karen and Paul, we've gotten a lot of correspondence. I've tried to respond to all the correspondence I've received. I've read it all very carefully. And, as I think I said last week, this is, I don't think this board needs to be convinced that this is a bad project in a bad location. And, before anybody worries, I've watched the videos of the blowout downs. I've seen them. I've done a lot of the reading. We, on the board, we have kind of liaison responsibilities so that, because we can't all go super deep on every single issue, but I can, assure the people in the audience that we've looked really carefully at it. Just to echo on what Karen said, one of the very hard things in the role we're in is that we all have to sort of make choices, and that's choices on where we spend our time, where we spend your money. And one of the things that this board tries to understand is how do we do that in a way that makes a difference? And I think coming into some of this, a question that I've had is, given that we have the communities of Braintree and the communities of Weymouth who are working very hard to try to prevent this bad project in a bad location from getting built, does putting some Hingham resources against this, will that help the fight? And I think what you heard from some of us is that, this project's a little bit different because, you think about something like, we got to buy a fire truck. Well, it's very tangible, it's very finite. When you talk about the world of litigation, it just is, it's very uncertain as to the timing and the scope. And, I can't speak for my colleagues, but I like to get my arms around the scope of something before making a commitment to engage. And I understand that at this point, we can't do that on this project. I get that. And I understand that if we don't preserve our right as an intervener, we won't have that chance down the road if we want to. So for me, the undefined scope is a little bit unique to this project, which I think I've said to members of the Compressor Station Task Force and some of the Hingham residents against the compressor station, help us understand, help me understand how Hingham could make a difference, what we could do, and I think I understand that this is a little bit of a unique animal. I think I've also said that it's been my experience in the past that when a community intervenes in something, they're jumping in, ready to fight, ready to strap on the armor, and I think what I'm after a lot of thought over the last week, I think I understand that this is a little bit unique, and that if we take this procedural step, it keeps that door open. I don't think I'm at the place tonight, and I don't know, Paul and Karen, I'm not at the place tonight where I can make a commitment to something specific, to an expert witness or monitoring or, helping Weymouth with their legal bills. I'm not at that place yet, but I think I could be persuaded tonight to cast a procedural vote that would preserve our right to do that. But for me, it would be important to be explicit on that. And I would ask that be clearly reflected in the motion, as well as in the minutes, because this compressor station project, this could be a very long haul for the South Shore. And while clearly this board can't bind a future board, I would like if this comes before a future board, I would like them to understand what this board sort of, decided it would do at this point. Because I think I've seen in the past where, when the town has, I've been in the circumstance where this board's been asked to commit to something and said it doesn't obligate the town, and then 6 months later being told that it obligates the town. And I don't like that. And so I think with the clarity in the language and understanding that this is a procedural vote, I would support the idea of the town filing for intervenor status. No pressure.
I remember when the Quincy shipyard was in operation and well, I don't remember when the Lexington was built there or the Massachusetts, but some of the biggest battleships in the history of the world came out of that yard. The USS Bainbridge was the first nuclear-powered destroyer, came out of that yard. There was heavy industry there. Edgar Station was there. This is an area that historically has involved a lot of heavy industry. And as time has wore on, it's kind of morphed into something very different. Why this particular site was chosen by this company, I can't speak to that, and I don't want to. I've read the material, in particular the material by the City of Weymouth and their permitting boards, because I take great interest in the effort of the permitting board, analyzing the material in a way that I just don't have the time to do. I have great confidence in Bob Hedlund's ability to safeguard and protect the interests of his city. I'm sure he's got a crack legal team with the requisite expert witness input that he needs to articulate the position he takes. I'm sure that's likewise true of the Mayor of Quincy. Having said all that, there are unknowns here that frankly make me uneasy, not because you can't articulate them, but because I just can't foresee or appreciate them. And it would be for that reason that I want to be on alert. What's moved me most in the messages I've received from the residents who have chosen to write to us, is the concern over the air. That to me, if you can't breathe, you can't live. But I'm also concerned about the public safety forces that we have in place. I know a lot of the policemen and the firemen, firefighters, police officers, and if something catastrophic were to occur there, they would be dragged in whether they liked it or not, and they would respond professionally whether they liked it or not. So for that reason, I think having a legal voice at the table is appropriate. I don't want to hire an expert witness that says the same thing that Bob Hedlund's expert witness says, though. I want you to very much understand that. But this is a long game move, I think, that we're taking here tonight. And if it's appropriate for us to do more than what we're doing, we want to retain the legal ability to do so. So that's the play. And I hope you understand that. To put $1 million worth of legal money into this fight isn't something that we're voting to do tonight at all. I want to be crystal clear there. I see people nodding, but you do have to appreciate that reality. We have a lot of competing demands for taxpayer dough, and I, like my two colleagues, am extraordinarily sensitive to spending the public money. But I think that this is a compelling issue that warrants taking the step that we are anticipating in our discussion with you tonight.
And Tom, I just want to clarify, you were able to consult with counsel such that the vote that we would take tonight potentially could be conditioned to be procedural, essentially procedural in nature.
That's right. So the last sentence in my proposed vote to you suggests that this step only represents approval for the filing of intervenor status. Any steps beyond that would require additional discussion by the board.
And by the way, folks, any additional discussion is going to happen out here in the public, with the cameras rolling, with the opportunity for public input. So we can't make any decisions in this town on anything without being in a public body. And that means that any time that this is going to be discussed, it has to be properly noticed. So that means at least 48 hours in advance, it's on an agenda, and that agenda has to be posted. Any possible votes have to be listed. So you know, there's going to be a lot of visibility on this. And Tom, I would say that, you know, I think a follow-up that maybe you and I would have is to, just to follow up on Mr. Ross's point. I think
Yeah,
the
that's a good
Compressor
idea.
Station Task Force, you folks are going to play a really important role as we go forward. And so I hear you in saying, hey, let us know what that role looks like. And I think that's something that we would want to do. Certainly as it relates to the air quality, we're going to rely on you to be, you know, continuing to be kind of monitoring that process, letting us know about things. But I would also hope that you could continue to keep the board apprised of the status of some of the other permitting, because while the town doesn't have any legal standing, any developments there might be helpful to what we're doing. So I think we would create a new charge that would define that, and you know, that'll help you move forward. But we would appreciate and look forward to your continued engagement on this issue for us.
Take a motion?
Sure, please.
I move that the town of Hingham take the legal step of requesting to intervene in the Department of Environmental Protection Air Quality Permit Review for the Algonquin Gas Transmission LLC and its proposed Weymouth facility. The step only represents approval for the filing of intervenor status.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, everybody.
You're welcome to remain, but we do have other business.
Happy Thanksgiving,
Want
everybody.
to hear about the Thomas Lincoln chair?
Yeah.
Don't leave yet.
Thanks for coming.
Okay.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
All right. Moving on, we have, go to the harbor. Thank you, ma'am.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Good night. We have other matters that we have to address.
Nope. Can you
We
contact
have
me
other
tomorrow?
matters.
I'm happy to talk to you. I'm Tom Mayo. I'm the town administrator. I'm in the office tomorrow.
You too. Gotta be kidding me, Paul.
And then there are three. Yeah.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Glenn.
it. Always good to have you.
larger copies, it might be easier.
Get larger.
Is that a commentary on my readers?
Oh,
Because I need them as well.
I picked up new glasses today, and I could not read this for the life of me when I got it.
Okay, greetings, Roger, Thomas. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to Roger Fernandez, the town engineer, and Tom Coveney, who's the, one of the members of the Harbor Development Committee. And before us tonight is a discussion, but not a vote, on an alteration that's being contemplated in the area that's commonly known as the Iron Horse. It's the Victory Park, or, so, you guys, whoever's doing the talking.
Real quick.
This
first-
is it.
Yeah, thank you for letting us present. Tom Coveney from the Harbor Development Committee. Bill Reardon couldn't make it tonight, and I appreciate Roger showing up as well. First of all, I want to be the first to wish the audience out there a happy Thanksgiving. Beat Paul to the punch, right? But on
You have
behalf
the
of the,
floor.
what's that?
You have the floor.
On behalf of the Harbor
Use
Development
of it.
Committee, we did briefly run into the chief in the hallway, made him somewhat aware of it, so, but we'll bring him up to speed. We know he needs his approval as well, a lot of boards. So this is very initial stage of changing some of the parking and the space down by the town pier. So that I'll turn it over to Roger, but the number one issue is safety and improving traffic flow.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom. So for those at home, just a little quick context. So this is a continuation of some prior discussions that we've had that really revolve around the improvements of the inner harbor walls. Some of those prior discussions included the final elevation of the walls, the types of materials, the studies associated with determining those elevations, the impacts, and they really relate to climate change and sea level rise and the vulnerabilities associated with that, while also looking at the walls from a structural standpoint, understanding the walls are not eminently failing, but they're beginning to come to the end of their useful life.
I just
So-
interrupt just 1 second, Roger, just to let, Bob, if you want to zoom in on my little table here, I got a plan on it. I don't know how readable it is, but it's something for people to follow along with. Oh, that's
Nope,
Karen.
that's me.
That's Karen.
I can hold up my plan. Yeah, exactly. Boy, this is the most FaceTime I've had.
So as Bob tries to work that out.
Describe it.
Like I said, it's a continuation of what has been a really deliberate process, systematic process that's taken, it's taken a couple of years to get to this point. This is really the last step, we think, before undertaking the permitting associated with the projects. When we begin to permit these projects, I just want to remind everyone that the idea here is to permit all the wharf locations that are being recommended for improvement at the same time. So that include Town Pier, Veterans Park, Barnes Wharf, well, I refer to it as Town Pier, also Victory Park and the Iron Horse Park, so it goes by a couple of names. But in any case, so the intent is to submit this all at the same time and permit all of these locations at the same time. There's no, we don't feel that there's any expiration date associated with the design or permitting, although some of that might require extensions in the future. But in an effort, by doing that, we know there'd be an economy of scale and a review process that would be more holistic. So we think that there's some advantages there. So as custodians, the Board of Selectmen, as custodians of the project, of the property, it's incumbent upon us to seek your approval to advance the permitting, which will include our local permitting, Planning Board, Zoning Board of Appeals, and the Conservation Commission, in addition to a lot of state permitting,
yeah.
Army Corps of Engineers, DEP, MEPA filings, which is also a notification process. So this is just the permitting alone. I'm anticipating it's probably a year long just to undertake that. So again, that's a little background, and just finally want to say in terms of background, this with the goal that once we have what we would consider to be shovel-ready projects, the town's not committing to any construction funding at this time. We understand there's a number of priorities, but it would put us in a position where we could seek grants that might become available. And being shovel-ready, it would put us in the best position we could be in order to sort of get those grants in hand. So with that, the changes that we're looking at in terms of what we have there and what we're proposing is one is a continuation of what has been a long-term vision, which is a harbor walk. Some of that's already been installed through the Grove, which is near the Bathing Beach parking lot, through the Bathing Beach parking lot itself. This upcoming construction season, we're going to continue that up to the parking lot next to the boat ramp. And this particular project would be a continuation of that walkway, ultimately connecting folks to the pedestrian bridge that's located at the Whitney Wharf Bridge and behind the Red Eye Roasters right now. So this plan contemplates all that. But it does shift the parking that's there now, that's located along the east side of Town Pier Wharf, to the south side, south of or closer to 3A or Otis Street. The net difference in terms of total parking spots would go from 36 spots lost, but we would gain 39. So a net increase of 3. We've provided for a 10-foot wide pathway that connects that parking area to the town pier itself. And the idea is that would be 10 feet wide. It would allow for public safety vehicles, and of course Ken Corson, our harbor master, could access the pier itself. We've met with Ken. He's looked at this, and he thinks that he's happy with the proposal from his functional standpoint. So that would be 10 feet wide. As we head west and around the front of Town Pier, that would reduce to 8 feet wide, which is consistent with all the other sidewalk along the Harbor Walk. And we're showing right now a dumpster location that is just west of Red Eye Roasters. We have more work to do here from a landscaping standpoint. One thing that we wanted to do is at some point, as we work on the 3A project, the wharfs, the bathhouse project, is to be able to come back at some point and come up with a holistic landscaping plan and really try not to do this piecemeal. So we've got all these projects that are up in the works, and we wanted to make sure that there was some continuity in whatever final landscaping plan was going to take place. And the proposed parking or the change in parking would, again, south of the Iron Horse statue, would go from parallel to perpendicular. That section of roadway, as you head west away from Red Eye Roasters, would be a one-way, which is what it currently is now. The aisle width is 18 feet wide, and again, this is all going to go through our local planning department as well. So we think that would provide a comfortable driving experience. We don't anticipate that would be an issue. It's consistent with what's required typically in this type of application.
Wait a minute there. The aisle width is 23 feet on planning board rules and regulations, except...
It's 18 here.
Well, that's my question. I know that there's a different dimensional requirement for angled parking spaces. You say they're perpendicular, but they look angled to me.
They're slightly angled, but 18
Yeah.
feet is what we pulled out of the rules and regs.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It would be 20 plus if it were
Two ways.
two-way traffic.
Okay.
Yeah.
So because it's one way, it's narrower.
Yeah.
But
And
this
they-
would all be A3 permitting anyways with the planning board.
Yep.
Yeah.
So again, just to restate, I mean, the permitting associated with this it's still it's a
Sure.
year. It's a long haul still. We have a lot of work to do.
And the planning board will deal with a lot of the parking specifics and make
Yes.
sure that this is in conformance with all of the zoning bylaws and all of the requirements.
Why is the dumpster down there?
Well, I think that right now we have, from time to time, we carry trash cans. I know we're fueling on the dumpster. It doesn't, so this is not a must-have. It's being shown on the plans, but right now we have trash cans closer
So
to.
it's open to debate.
Yeah, it's open to
We
debate.
talked about it last meeting internally on options, et cetera, so that's open to debate. I know
You're
it's a sore
killing me.
spot. Yes, I know,
You're killing me, man.
I know. Talk to Bill.
No wonder he didn't come.
No problem.
See the ideas they had the other night. Some of the
You
trash
get some nice
receptacles.
you get some nice lattice work
That's why
around
you're in the
that.
big bucks.
Yeah, exactly.
I never knew such green space would be so hard to protect.
We'll make it on the ground.
So Roger, if I'm reading this correctly, right now, as you go down kind of Iron Horse Park next to Red Eye Roasters, there are a series of parking spots, and so those are essentially going to go away.
Correct.
Okay. And if I think about, if somebody right now goes into Red Eye Roasters, and so you drive past Red Eye Roasters and you're along here, there are a series, right now, people are parking kind of, they're parking, as you said, perpendicular to Iron Horse Park. But then there are also some spots, as you're driving down there on the left-hand side, kind of facing 3A. So how many spots are getting added there compared to what's there already? Because I'm just, are we adding 39 new spots, or?
Well, the 39 is just intended to represent the change. So we're losing 36 in total. So the
So we're
ones that
losing
are
36 along the park?
along the waterfront
Along the
and
waterfront.
along the Iron Horse Park, perpendicular to the Iron Horse
Okay.
Park.
That was,
So I try to
gotcha.
give you a sense of
Yep.
what's coming away and what's being added.
Thank
Yeah.
you, okay.
Yeah.
Yep, that's helpful. And the idea is, and can you just confirm for me on this drawing, right now, what's been approved for the walkway, is it the walkway to the east side of the boat ramp or the west side of the boat ramp?
It would be both as part of this project.
Or-
if you-
so what's
Oh,
al-
I'm sorry, the boat
What's already
ramp.
been approved?
Oh, no, it would be the side east of the boat ramp. So as you look at the plan, you see the boat ramp, everything to the right of that is being proposed.
Okay, yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And so the idea is to go around the outer perimeter of Iron Horse Park so that you would have a walkway that would then lead you to the Whitney Wharf Bridge,
Precisely.
which would then allow you, so that portion of the walkway would be perhaps contemplated with CPC funding or,
It could be, sure.
okay. And did the committee consider at all that, I understand you're taking the parking off of that area. Is there, because the walkway itself isn't going to be as wide as maybe those parking spots. Do you want to get the cars off? Do you want to get the parking spots off of there?
We do. I think that, at least, I think the committee, and I think I'd echo their opinion, is that, in terms of the prime real estate, I mean, if the
Yep.
intent is to create green space, sometimes referred to as livable space that's actually used in a passive way, that the cars are parked in one of those prime spots. I
Okay.
mean, if you want to walk along the waterfront, you can look at the back of a Chevy, or we can get rid of that Chevy and put it more in the utilitarian section of the parking lot.
Okay.
Combine that all and let folks experience that waterfront. That's
Yep.
the intent.
Okay, that's helpful. And just a final question on this drawing. There's a note about removing and reinstalling the harbor master shed. Is that to reinstall it just so that, I know especially this past winter, it nearly washed away.
Yeah.
Is that the rationale for relocating it?
It is, so we would probably just push that back just slightly in order to accommodate the sidewalk that you see there, with the intent always to be able to have,
Why do we need that
the shed.
shed there?
I think we talked to Kenny about that, and we asked the question, he still feels he needs a presence there.
Isn't he out on the water?
He, I would have to defer that to Ken, and it's something that we
boss.
can.
I'm
we
at the
felt like he
intermodal
needed a
center.
presence.
He's at the intermodal center.
I mean, to me, it's a weird look. It's just
Yeah.
perched there, and it,
I mean, moving it's not gonna be difficult at all. I mean, it's literally just like a shed, you can pick it up with a machine and move it
put it where
wherever.
the dumpster is.
We could do that too.
I guess one of the things I would just sort of throw out there is that now the harbor master and the town took, it was a very long effort to get the harbor master's office, relocated to the intermodal center. And, and anytime, Roger, anytime we kind of have a structure, we got to take care of that structure. And especially a structure that's located near the water, where it is so susceptible to all the different elements.
You need to see value in that.
I just,
yeah. I think we should probably broach that again with the chief and the harbor master and see,
Yeah,
just
just what he,
revisit that.
just what he needs.
You know,
Justify.
I imagine that, I understand there's a lot of waterway to cover, so you may still want to have, some marine presence, especially towards the inner harbor, but we seem to, I think you've heard us talking about the bathhouse, and the question of if we build a new bathhouse, do we still need the old one? It's just, more buildings to take care of, more places where we have people and systems and,
Right.
okay. Thank you for the explanation. And these color drawings were helpful in kind of
Locating it.
explaining some of this. I understand it a lot better now.
Super, thank you.
Why are you calling it Hastings Wharf, just out of curiosity? Isn't the historic name for that wharf Kimball Wharf?
If there's anything that says that here, we'll make sure we remove that.
Yeah,
I'm not sure why
You got
that.
your colorized
On the color one, on the color version.
iterations.
Oh, yeah, so that, yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Yeah.
I just want to clarify what you said. You've got 30-something spaces that are impacted. Are you talking about the existing spaces that are restriped, as well as the construction of the new additional ones contemplated by the removal of the existing ones on the side?
Yeah,
Okay.
yep.
And there's, in light gray hatched in front of that area where the small beach is, there's some remaining parallel spots. Are those to stay?
They are,
Okay.
yep. I think what we tried not to do is to, because in everything that you see here, the delta or the change is more green space. So by taking away the parking in front of the walls, if we were to measure the pavement and measure the non-pavement, and the net is more grass and less pavement. When we looked at this particular section, we could have done similar to what you see there, that angled or parking, but then that would have meant loss of some green space. And at that point, we thought that that probably wasn't the best thing to do.
Does this throw any of the existing permits out of compliance?
We don't think so, no. Now, we did research, this may be where you're going, we did research the lease agreement with Red Eye Roasters, and we looked at whether or not the leasing of those space was site-specific. In other words, did it say in front of the wall? And it didn't say that,
It's supposed to
so.
be general.
It was general. It
Okay.
called out the area. As long as we weren't taking spaces away, we thought we were meeting the intent of the agreement.
All right. And the property owner has been briefed on this?
Yeah, yeah, and we've been really good, we've tried really diligently to communicate to all the property owners.
Okay. And the existing parking spaces on the side would have to be taken out anyway because of the work that's going to be
That's a
performed
good point.
there
That's
with
it,
the
and I
wall.
failed to mention, that's a good point. Those are gonna have to be taken out as part of the work anyway.
Is it contemplated that there would be a hard strip to the existing town ramp for vehicle access at any point in the future?
For pedestrian access?
Well, for a wheeled vehicle? I'm not suggesting you should, I'm just asking whether that was part of the discussion at all.
I don't think we've gotten there yet. I think one of the things, the next section, I think and it's a bit of a struggle, is figuring out how to connect that final piece where the ramp is, and what we're gonna be able to do to this point. So to be candid, I don't know that we've gotten there just yet.
To get it over the walkway, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
And dimensionally, would the proposed walkway around the wharf be the same as what appears down at the bathing beach?
Yes, sir. Yep. 8 feet wide.
Brick?
And we listed here as a hard surface. It could be brick or it could be pavement. And the reason why we did that, and the brick looks great, is that we're sensitive to the costs associated with each. But when we permit the project with the Conservation Commission, they want to know, their main focus is going to be how much impervious material are we creating. So if it's brick or if it's pavement, when we permit the project, we can analyze that and tell them what that's going to be, and with the understanding that depending upon funding and the town's desires, we can go in either direction. But if we called it, a dirt walkway, then it's pervious, then it's a different application, it's a different process for permitting.
Is there an issue with respect to movement where it's that close to the water?
I'm sorry?
Is there an issue with respect to the walkway moving where it's that close to the water?
No, because remember, as part of the project, we're going to be increasing the height of the walls and the resiliency of the walls. So where we, in the past, as you said, as Ms. Powell said, we would see the flooding up and over the wall, it would damage everything behind that potentially that we put in. But because we're raising the walls and we're effectively creating that resiliency, that's the most important aspect of the work, I think. We feel that we'll be able to protect the assets that we, or the investment that we put into the project.
But if waves top the harbor face of the wall onto the walk, can the walkway withstand that?
A certain amount, but certainly an inundation, sort of, underwater situation, which is what we have out there sometimes now, that would be a problem. Yeah. Because as part of this, you don't see it clearly shown here, we're actually installing some drainage structures. Actually, you can see it, potentially, little circles. So the drainage structures are intended to accommodate any flooding that comes up and over the walls. So because we're creating sort of a bath, if you will, a tub sort of situation there, if water were to make it over, then we feel like the water would we're creating some drainage structures out there that would alleviate that water.
The riprap's going to take away the existing small beach that's there?
It will, yeah.
And what is the purpose of the riprap there?
The purpose is to also, it's less expensive than the vertical granite that we've talked about, and it's the same idea behind the vertical granite, which is to be able to provide that resiliency that we need.
What would its height be?
I'm sorry?
What would its height be?
11 feet, NAVD, 16.2 MLW, mean low water mark. So it would be the same.
What's that mean in plain English?
It would raise, if you're standing on the
Parking lot.
the parking lot, it's coming up about 2.5 to 3 feet.
Okay. So it'll be set in to the sand that's there presently? and-
Yeah. Very similar to what we did near the bathing beach, that type of wall.
It appears that they're going to be large blocks.
They're intended to be large boulders, armor stone boulders, strategically placed.
So they're manufactured.
Yeah, well, they're not, no, they're not concrete, they're actual stones. Anywhere from 2.5 to 5 ton stones. If it's similar to what we did, if you look at the bathing beach and the bathing beach parking lot, and you look left of that headed towards Otis Hill,
Right.
that whole inner harbor is protected with a similar stone.
Okay.
Parts of it over the years have moved, but the newest part that we installed a couple of years ago is in really decent shape. It looks pretty nice, I think.
Has there been any discussion with respect to the trees that surround the statue?
We won't be touching any of those trees. The bushes that are along that
Right.
parking lot will go. They're not,
Or has there been any
Beautiful
discussion
bushes.
about removing the trees, or?
so we don't plan on removing any of the trees. Yeah.
You can remove the ones you want to remove. It's part of the plan. It's, it's open to debate. But it's, the ones we were concerned about, the ones by the street, to keep all those,
Yes.
by Iron Horse Park and all those open.
I mean, is the majesty of the statue lost by the trees surrounding it?
Well, here's the good news. I mean, again, as part of at some point, a landscaping plan,
Yeah, that's what I
we
thought
can
I
really
understood.
start to look
Yeah.
at
Okay.
everything, in terms of what is the vision out there. Right now, we would be attacking this sort of piecemeal, which never tends to be the right way to do that type of work.
I
My
appreciate-
talking points only said we're gonna keep the trees by the street, so I don't have a talking point about the ones by Iron Horse.
I like the idea of a holistic landscape. I mean, I think what's so exciting about the work that you're doing is you're looking at the whole waterfront. And as you're sort of attacking each piece, you have a bigger plan and a vision in mind. And I think extending that to the landscaping makes an awful lot of sense.
So what happens with the seawall project? And what, is the timing coincident with this, or what?
With this work, it would be the same time.
At the same time?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that in the riprap that Paul pointed out, we've got to lose that little beach in order to continue with sort of the integrity of the harbor.
Yeah, and we talked fairly extensively about that in terms of the value from just as a beach itself. I think the harbor master always has expressed some concerns that boats are coming in and off the ramp.
That's true, yep.
And is this the best place for you to park your family and have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? And he felt like he actually favored seeing the beach go away. It just didn't seem like a great place for that.
Okay. And,
It's changed over time. It's
It has.
smaller than it was.
yeah,
We have a meeting once a month. You guys, anybody can attend out there in the audience. Once a month, we have a Harbor Development Committee meeting, right?
And you are
This input
likewise
is-
invited to attend our meetings,
Yes,
sir.
that's right. Everybody's invited to participate in those meetings, and feedback like that's critical, so it's good.
And Roger, the permitting timeline, do they travel parallel tracks? Do you have to get state approvals first before you undertake local approvals? How does that work? Like, I wouldn't want to get too far down the line here in Hingham, only to understand that the state has a different vision for this. How does that come together?
There are two processes by which we're going to be required to before we even advance locally, one is the Chapter 91 licensing for any structures along the water. So what we've done in the past is we've gone before ZBA. The intent there is to get, I've always said, I want my people to give me their opinion first. So the people who live in the town before I go to the state. Now, what ends up happening there is the ZBA won't actually issue their decision or the final findings until we receive the Chapter 91 license. So we did this very similar approach to the Whitney Wharf Bridge. They heard us, what I'll call informally. You know, what don't you guys like? What's the problems? Because if you don't like it, I don't want to submit it to the state.
Yeah.
And this is what we'd like to see. We walked away with a clear understanding. We submitted to the state. They didn't give us any decision. At that point, we submitted to the state for a Chapter 91 license. We need to have that before they can tell us they're okay with it. All those licenses have to be in place before the ZBA can take a position on that.
Okay.
And so that last position, it's really a formality, because at that point, we know what they want. We're confident that we've got, and the last time we did it, I didn't even have to attend the meeting. It was really a formality. But we like to have our local permitting groups and bodies have a first bite at the apple. So what we're presenting to the state is consistent with the town's vision and not the state's vision.
And so ultimately, are you looking for design funds for this? Or will this come out of the appropriation that you currently have?
It's out of the appropriation we currently have, yeah.
But we'd be the applicant because we
Correct.
control the property.
So typically what happens is, with the board's okay to advance, as the custodians of the property, to advance the permitting, that question comes to us, as it should, from the permitting boards. Then when the permits come up, I would see Mr. Mayo with the understanding that the board's on board, and he would sign those permit requests with the understanding the board has the board's support.
And is this in a historic district?
It is. So in addition to our local historic commission, we've got Mass Historic we've got to notify as well. So it's pretty
When do you need
extensive.
an answer from us?
Well, there are two things that really are preventing us at this point from advancing the permitting. One is, of course, your position, and then the second is we're trying to permit the walls along with tandem with the floats that are going over at Hingham Maritime Center. So again, in order to have everything sort of, it's easier and it's more efficient, and permitting boards like to know, at the state level and the local level, like to know that you're not coming in with bits and pieces and kind of trying to sneak little things. This is the whole picture. So we're close to that with them, I think, in the next couple of weeks. Once we understand what that design is going to look like, working with them, and we get your approval to advance this as your applicant, we'll be good to go.
So you're going to be coming in with an iteration with respect to Bonds Wharf for us to sign off on as well?
We probably need to do that anyway as it relates to the floats. So we envisioned, because it's a grant and the final, it's still a town, well, you know, it's still a town asset, if you will. So we envision having it maybe come back, and at that time, it would be nice to have your approval across the board.
And again, the existing parking for the boat ramp that extends out from Whitney Wharf there, you're saying that you don't believe this change in parking then changes the situation for either Red Eye Roasters or that wharf area?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Questions from the audience? Sure, Jim. You know the drill.
Jim Watson, 291 Rockland Street. I know I asked this the other day, but there's a lot of talk about specifically raising the elevations of some of the wharfs against the long-term 3-foot high tide. Is there at least a conceptual plan for the low-lying areas in between? I'm assuming that there are gaps between the
Yes.
proposed added protection.
Yep, so when we developed sort of our priority list and we presented to the Board of Selectmen, and bear in mind, this is a follow-up to the Kleinfelder report that looked at those vulnerable locations along the Inner Harbor. We identified the locations in terms of their impact and susceptibility to flooding. And those, again, were considered as part of the risk analysis. Now, there are some wharfs out there that are privately owned that at some point in the future we're going to have to look at and visit as we begin to sort of go through this process. But in all of this, whether it's the bathing beach section, that we increase the height at that armor stone wall, as we continue east, the intent was always to do this sort of systematically. So, and that's a function of a number of things, not the least of which is available funding and the ability to permit the project. So, yes, there are still things that need to still be looked at, but we've really targeted the worst locations we think as part of this work.
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
sort of assumed something like that.
Yep.
Are we,
The study group is looking at the hull to winter structure.
Yeah.
Just in case it doesn't happen,
Sure.
Thank you for amazing.
Oh, thank you.
are we retaining or collecting data that just shows, you know, the level of the harbor during the course of the years that are ensuing during all of this, just to make sure that our initial assumptions don't need to be revisited, or?
Yeah, so we have, as part of that risk assessment and study of, you know, the tidal action, you target particular years based on a forecasted sea level rise. And then in some of our prior discussions, we've talked about sort of trying to find that sweet spot between investment and risk. So if we wanted, for example, I'm just going to use this somewhat arbitrary, but let's say we wanted 100% guarantee that in 50 years or 60 years, it's never going to flood. Well, that increases the cost of the project by X amount of dollars. That means the walls raise up, instead of 2.5, 3 feet, they raise up 6 or 7 feet. So then we begin to find that spot where we're, okay, this is an acceptable level of risk based on the data that we've collected, and this is the elevation. In addition to that, what we've done is the type of construction we're proposing provides for some modular aspects. So if we saw in 15 or 20 years that the, you know, climate change has really been, the sea level rise is growing at a faster pace than we anticipated, we would throw another block on top of the walls, for example, and we can throw another course of stone on top of the armor stone wall. So it's being designed, the foundation and the bottom, so that we can add to that if we had to.
Your question, similar to I asked the question, same thing, was who's measuring now, like year 2018, 2019, on an annual basis, how do we stand? And I don't know if we're doing that right now from an annual basis of, because the study was like 3 years ago. You say now we're getting closer to 2030. Where do we stand, and has it been rising over the time? I don't know.
Well, it's no pun intended, but it's literally catching the tide, because as we begin to move the project along and you design an elevation, you know, that might change. Do we restudy all of that? What's required is we needed to, and we did, forecast. And those forecasts helped us understand the acceptable risk, and they are looking out, you know, 50 years and 60 years.
Yeah, the only baseline I had was Ferd Lucas said in his 40 years of owning that building, the first year the water came over his edge last year during those storms, right?
Is there any consideration given to the fact, though, that by raising the seawalls in some areas of the harbor, it's going to divert the water into the lower laying areas that don't have the same kind of protection? And where are we there?
Yeah, so we looked at that as well, and it's actually developed what's called an inundation map, and it begins to look at, so if the water rises 2 feet, what does it look like? If it rises 3 feet, what does it look like? And what you find is that, in general, you know, if it raises 10 feet, then, you know, all bets are off. But what we saw, for example, at the Town Pier, Iron Horse, Victory Park, is that you get that influx of water, then at some point there are elevations behind that prevent the water from going any further. And so where it becomes a problem is where it topples 3A. So we still have, you know, there's some locations that we would see that immediate inland flooded, but nothing as of right now, that, and we haven't seen it to date, that would come up and potentially come up and over the highway. If that, as we begin to move forward and begin to, continue to look at this, there are controlled structures that are not, horrible to look at, and things that we can do from grading of the existing ground, raising the ground, or buildings, or putting additional granite stone along the roadway. And so these are things that we've thought about that can be done for short term and less money, that would provide protection if we saw a systemic issue at those locations.
And I think if Bill were here, he would, I think, remind us all that, the projects being proposed in the wharfs are only one step in this.
Right.
And the real answer is that the entire waterfront has to be shored up
Right.
in order to sustain and respond to not only the Kleinfelder report, but the frequency of these, I think we've had 3 or 4 50-year events in the last 10 years.
Right.
And, I think it's important to keep that in mind because, what we're really talking about here, this is a safety issue for the town. This isn't, this isn't cosmetic. This is a safety issue for the town that comes from being a coastal community. And I think we need to keep in mind that I think when Bill was last in presenting sort of the numbers on just addressing the wharfs, it was about $10 million. There's going to be another sizable investment that will be needed after that in order to complete this work. And I think as we're looking at all the different capital projects in the town, it's really important that we keep this one in mind and understand that this is resiliency, this is a safety issue, and it's the data and the studies say that this issue isn't going to go away, and we have to, as you said, Roger, we have to kind of manage the risk. So I think, as our board is looking at different capital projects, this one's on the radar screen as well.
Anything else you'd like to add, Council?
All set, thank you. Very
I know we
informative, as
took you a
always.
little far afield, but I appreciate you weighing in and helping us understand this all the more. We'll get back to you shortly with an answer.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a good night,
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Roger. Have a good evening. Okay, at that point in the evening, we're done with agenda items, so we'll move on to take some
Thomas Duncan.
votes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
All right, Tom.
Yes, sir. So we have a vote I would like you to take to allow Chairman Healy to sign a joint ownership agreement and a loan agreement for what's commonly referred to as the Thomas Lincoln Chair. It is a chair that has been on loan to the Museum of Fine Arts for quite some time. It's coming back home to Hingham, and unfortunately, the question of ownership is actually uncertain between the folks over at the First Parish Church and the town. So what we've done is, instead of a quibble over that, we've drawn up an agreement that would place the chair at the Heritage Museum, where it likely belongs, and both parties agree to that. And it wouldn't be removed without both parties' agreement, so that it will go where it was gonna go anyway, and both parties just agree to let it go there. And if anything has to change, both parties have to agree to that change.
Now, the First Parish Church, that's the church on the corner of Main and Elm?
Yes.
Old shit. Well, I'd like to thank the church for its generosity in putting this piece of our history on public display at the Derby Museum. I don't intend to sit in it.
I didn't know you were invited to sit in
I
it.
know, that's presumptuous.
Yeah, to say.
You know, Tom, you're here. Can you give us a little bit of history of what the chair is, or do you have anything, or?
Yeah.
Am I putting you on the spot?
No, I could talk about it for an hour or so.
Well, how about a few minutes? Just want you to come up and join us at the table.
Tom Wilson, 88 Summer Street. So let me ask you first, do you know anything about the background of this?
That's why I'm asking, my man.
Well, I know, but I'm just wondering if the...
It's an old chair.
It's kind of old.
So as we were getting ready to restore Old Ship Church in 2008, we needed to do an inventory of our antiques, and so we had this chair that was sitting up there since 1933 up in the altar area. We had it appraised and found out that it was worth something in the range of $350,000, and it had just been sitting up there, used by everybody, moved around, you know, whatever. We knew it was an old chair, but didn't realize that there are only 22 of these chairs carved in the early 17th century left in America today, and the few that have been sold were up into the $500,000 or $600,000 range, down to the $200,000 range. This was a Lincoln associated chair, a Lincoln family chair, carved by Thomas Lincoln in probably 1630s, 1640s. So when we realized how expensive it was, the first thing I did is I took it home and put it up in my bedroom and made sure that no one was going to walk off with it, because it's not all that hard to break into Old Ship Church.
All right, well, we don't need to say that.
So, and
Chief,
we
you're on that.
called the MFA and said, would you like to take a look at this? And they heard about it, and they came down, took a look, and we immediately took it over to their warehouse in Braintree. And then it ended up being a centerpiece to the new Americana wing when that opened up at the MFA. It's the oldest piece in that wing, documented piece, and it's a fantastic chair. So the issue was, at the time, I was on both the Historic Commission and on the board at Old Ship, so wearing two hats. But Alec McMillan, as the town historian, was concerned that maybe the town owned it, and he made a case that it was part of the bell tower. It was given by the Lincoln family to the bell tower in 1912. After about 20 years sitting there in the minister's room on the second floor, there was so much humidity in that room that it was destroying the cherry walls and the other furniture and whatnot, so much water, and it was actually damaging the chair as well. So in 1933, it was moved over to the church, and it's been sitting there ever since. And the question is, who owned the bell tower? This is a bigger story than you wanted to hear, but the end of it is that when the town gave the bell tower, when First Parish gave the bell tower to the town in 1977, that gift was only for the building, not for anything that was in the building or any of the furniture or whatever. So there was never the intent of Old Ship to give that and some other items to the town. It was only the building itself that was given to the town. So the question is, did the town own it or did Old Ship own it? And one side point is that the bell tower was never incorporated. It was only a committee. Committees can't own real property. So we argued that it was never really owned by the town. The Old Ship argued that, and the town owned or said that no, it was actually given. The intent was by the Lincoln family to be given to the bell tower. So we both agreed to disagree. We didn't want to litigate. We wanted to just protect the chair, and we ultimately wanted to bring it back to Hingham when there was a safe place for it, and now there is a safe place for it.
Sounds like a good
So
resolution.
Yeah.
So but everybody got what they wanted, the safety of the chair, and it'll be in the town forever, as far as we're all concerned.
Well, thank you for that explanation.
Well, that sounds like the Historical Society is stepping up in a big way to ensure the chair and to maintain proper storage of the chair, and also the ability of the public to view the
Yeah,
chair, right?
it'll be there for good, and that the Kelly Gallery, which is all,
Yeah, which is all
security and-
secure and
yeah, right.
climate controlled,
Yeah,
right?
so it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And hopefully it'll be a nice article about it when it comes back.
Hint, hint.
So that's the
Thank
That's
you.
the short version. Sorry.
I like that.
Take a motion?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to authorize the chair, to sign the Thomas Lincoln Chair Joint Ownership Agreement.
I'll second that.
Favor?
Aye.
I move that we authorize the chair to sign the Thomas Lincoln Chair Loan Agreement.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye. Well done. That's exciting.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the issuance of a special one-day all alcoholic beverages license to.
Can I ask some questions about this one?
Didn't we just do this?
This is a different one.
This is a different one.
Which one are you doing?
Yeah, the last one. We're not doing this.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, paint night, was it,
All right.
is this a new one for paint night?
No, so Paul, on the vote list, you're doing all of the vote list items. On the agenda, you're not doing number 3.
Okay.
So there were 5 votes listed on the agenda. I'm asking that you only consider 4 of them.
So the BSO event,
For the BSO event, we are doing.
And the chief is here to answer any questions on these.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to approve, strike the last statement with respect to what I thought was going to be the vote. This will be the vote. Entertain a motion to approve the issuance of a special one-day wine and malt beverages license to Patricia McKenna on behalf of WSM Hingham Properties LLC for the BSO event to be held at Derby Street Sidewalks on Wednesday, November 28th from 4 to 7 p.m.
I mean, I'll second it, but I'd like to ask the chief a couple of questions about it. Okay, so it's the sidewalk area near Capitol One. It looked to me like, I mean, on the map, that it kind of intrudes underneath the awning of Rustic Kitchen, which is itself a licensed premises, or is that not the case? It's sort of outside, it's just in that adjacent, like in front of where the Lululemon used to be?
Yeah,
You know
there's,
the Lululemon, right?
yes, I go there often.
Okay,
yes.
that's, just checking. So it's not, it's just in that
No,
space?
excuse me. The drawing is a little bit confusing because there's all these circles, and
Yeah,
those
yeah.
are shade trees.
Okay,
I had to ask that. I thought they were clearance issues, but there is sufficient room there. And I felt that being on a Wednesday night at that time period, there'll be a four-piece quartet, I guess it is.
sure,
That would be playing that are members of the symphony orchestra.
okay. And they're gonna rope this off somehow?
It will be cordoned off, and there'll be an area like we did similar to the Halloween. And they
Okay.
have to just changing the location over to where the trees are and stuff. It's a little better location.
Okay.
Um,
I mean, the thing I liked about Halloween was it was a physically defined space, and it
Yes,
wasn't, it also
yeah.
wasn't anywhere near the sidewalk. This one I see that you've approved it and made sure that there is,
Sufficient
sufficient walking
yes.
space, but, you're gonna,
That's actually why I didn't approve the other one.
okay.
I asked
How
them to
about,
withdraw that because they were planning that event on Black Friday.
yeah, crazy.
And I said, you just can't do that
No,
because it's just,
Right.
it's too much traffic there already.
Right,
This is an issue that we've had in front of planning boards before when they want to do other things, and I think eventually, my recommendation is this, is that if they continue to ask for permits, I think we need to look at the planning and zoning board issues that might entail on the usage of a shopping mall like that. I think it's a change of venue.
and how about a detail? How many officers, have you required a detail
They will
for
have a
this?
detail officer present for the Board of Symphony. When they have alcohol, they have to have the detail officer there to ensure that the people don't leave that area. I don't want alcohol, people walking around the mall with their glasses of beer or something like that,
Right.
So it's a contained area and they have to stay in that zone.
I guess and maybe I'll just take a quick crack at it. Maybe we can talk about this. I think when we're up there, I think when we're granting a liquor license, I feel like the geography should be better defined in our vote. So like here, it just says to be held at the Derby Street sidewalks, which is, I know what they've asked for.
Yeah.
And I know that it's in the plan here, but it's not what the, it's not what the vote says. So I guess I'd just like
We
to
could definitely be more specific.
be
in
a
our
little
vote.
more specific in the vote. that-
Referencing plans,
Referencing
et
the
cetera.
plan or something.
Yep.
Because.
No, that would be agreeable,
Because
but
it's
I
sort of,
think-
to your
yeah.
point, like when you just read this, you think, oh, people are roaming around up at Derby Street with open containers.
Yeah, no, that was part of the conditions, that they have to have a zone, and it's contained within those zones, and that would be protected by a detail officer to make sure.
Okay.
That doesn't
Well, I
occur.
appreciate all your work on this, because I think it's, I think it's fun and festive, and I think we want people to shop up there, and we want to create a, festive environment, but I think it's also one of those things that, there's a line there that I think we got to be
Yeah,
careful.
and
don't cross.
we are developing more ongoing discussion, because I'm really not that happy with that location.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
if you moved it to the area where the Halloween was, it's in a better spot, there's more room. But I think the whole concept of the shopping plaza doing this kind of activity seem to me like it's a little bit beyond my scope of whether that's within their permitting.
Yeah, okay.
So I've told them that they should probably discuss that with the planning boards and the zoning boards.
Yep, that's a good.
Living nearby there, so I'm up there fairly often. Just the amount of, it's booming over there, which is great for all of the merchants and the owners. At the same time, and at the holiday season, it really does pick up. I've even noticed it started, so I'm glad this is on a Wednesday night, and I kind of want to understand how it all goes, because there's going to be an awful lot of activity in that shopping center. Parking is already tight. You got a lot of pedestrians. You got people that, jump out into the street and don't use the crosswalk. So, I'm just thinking about an already kind of busy place with more activity, and
Yeah, and I'll be
at some
quite
point,
honest
we're
with
going to
you,
have a little bit of a tipping point.
I
And
struggled
just,
with this one. Yeah.
I think we want to see how this goes, and that may inform, future decisions. And
Well, and I think we have to be mindful that the rain date is actually a Friday night, so, I'm all right letting this go, but I think I'll add a little language to the vote, and to Mary's point, I think we need to.
Yes, I would agree, in agreement with you, and I've expressed that to them
Okay.
before we do this again, because I think we need to sort of establish some better ground rules and how often this is going to happen.
Right.
I just don't think they should be doing this, and they're essentially going to be, if they would continue to do this all the time, it would almost be like running a business or serving alcohol up there, and that's not what the intention of these are for.
That's a good point, too, yeah.
Although that being said, there are venues up there where alcohol is an integral part of the offering. So-
But with a standing license, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think the idea of getting the planning board in the mix, is probably, helpful.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome, Chief. Thanks for the input.
Karen, if you want to, you can amend the motion to include the plan
Yeah.
as presented, and then we would just simply add it to the
Work
minutes.
off the plan.
Include it in the minutes.
Okay, the plan as presented, is that what you're recommending?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, we take an amendment to your motion?
I will.
All right. I'd like to add at the end, as described in the plan as presented. So the motion would read in its entirety to approve the issuance of a special one-day wine and malt beverages license to Patricia McKenna on behalf of WSM Hingham Properties LLC for the BSO event to be held at Derby Street sidewalks on Wednesday, November 28th. Do we need to, I think we need to vote the rain date, too, right? Because
Sure.
otherwise they don't have a.
Yep.
Okay, so two amendments then.
Sure.
An event to be held at Derby Street sidewalks on Wednesday, November 28, 2018, or in the event of rain on Friday, November 30th, 2018, from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. as described in the plan as presented.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next.
I would move that we approve the issuance of a special one-day all alcoholic beverages license to Mary Ann Blackmur on behalf of the Hingham Community Center for Ceramic Paint Night with Jill Powell to be held at the Hingham Community Center on Thursday, December 6, 2018, from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, well, that wasn't too bad. We got through that. I'm sorry.
Did I say that out loud?
Thinking out loud. Just,
Sure.
we'll go around the horn. See. Joe, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
Okay. Thomas?
I'm good, thank you.
Nobody wants to talk.
Come on.
Come on.
Well, Michelle and Thomas, I know, have been burning the midnight oil, getting ready the budget materials for us, and you'll be seeing that rolled out in the next several weeks. So the staff time that it takes to get all of that material ready to go so that we can have a look at it is incredible, and I really extend my appreciation to both of you and the rest of your staff, Sue Nickerson in particular, but also Sally and Sharon for beginning to pull this all together. It's a mammoth effort, so I appreciate that. And on Sunday, I went to Bear Cove Park because it was the last day of the season for the opening of the museum that Scott McMillan has pulled together at the Green Building. And it was really, so sort of coming off our discussion from a couple weeks prior about the role of our shipyard in the conflicts that this country has faced was incredible. And the amount of information and artifacts that he's pulled together, it just really, really is incredible. So it was a great visit. I think it's on the Bear Cove website. They open about, I don't know, 8 times a year or so. And it was a fascinating visit. So I appreciate that. And I know we'll all wish you a happy Thanksgiving as well.
I would just like to acknowledge 2 organizations that have put forth great efforts to help members of our community have a good Thanksgiving. The first is the Hingham Mothers Club, which this past Friday held its annual Thanksgiving luncheon at the Senior Center, staffed with some students who also helped. It was really just, as always, a tremendous day. And secondly, just our thanks and appreciation to the Hingham Food Pantry and all of the different organizations that have helped. Over the last couple of days, with the community's help and with wonderful volunteers, I believe the Food Pantry has probably distributed Thanksgiving dinners for, you know, I'm guessing between 150 and 200 families in Hingham.
That's incredible.
And, you know, the church pews on Sunday are filled with boxes. There's a whole system. And what is so remarkable is that in a few weeks, the food pantry is going to turn around and do it all over again for Christmas.
Yep.
And so just many thanks to Susan Kiernan and to her team, to all the civic organizations, to everybody who donated food, to everybody who helped do this. It is just a wonderful thing that we do in our community, and it is just very much appreciated.
I'd like to thank the people that reached out to express their enjoyment of the remarks I made on Veterans Day. I had a gentleman come up to me yesterday and question me as to why I didn't speak to my own father's experience, and I deliberately opted not to. But I did send a copy of the remarks to his sergeant, who I've known for 25 years and enjoy very much. So he replied with a little story that I only learned after my father's death. My dad was at the at the Chosin Reservoir as a United States Marine, and when they were working their way back to Hunan, the Chinese were really giving them a good go. And they were on trucks, deuce and halves, and the Chinese ambushed them. They all ran, and my father realized that one of his comrades, his buddies, wasn't with them. He ran back. Guy had been shot in the hip. The Chinese were burning the trucks with the people in them, got him out, and got him back. I didn't learn about that until, I don't know, a week ago. So the things you learn about your veterans, my father was a Korean War veteran. You know, I'd urge people just to talk to their family members. If you got anybody in the service, just ask them, you know, what it was like. And that's, I think, how history stays preserved. On a lighter note, my 6-year-old grandson has asked me to join him at Foster School tomorrow as his favorite person. I think that's what Rosamond said. So I'm going. Excellent. And it's kind of funny because the last time I did this, I was a policeman, and I went into school when she was in
That's great.
that grade. So, you know, life's a full circle, boy. Everybody, have a nice Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Really, really do hope that everybody, you know, get some time to kind of recharge the batteries and just reflect on how lucky we all are. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night.